Welcome to my channel. If you're new, please don't forget to subscribe and also like the video if you found it useful. In this video, I'll show you how to answer part A of paper 1 in the Edexcel iGCSE History qualification. And this is a very different type of video. It's not something that I have done before, but I thought it would be a good video to upload because it's something that I had been trying to find for quite a while as a student, and after doing a lot of research and getting confused like quite a lot, I finally found out the ideal way to answer paper 1, and this video is about answering just part A. I'm going to make more videos later on about the other parts of this paper. So let's begin. First of all, you might be wondering, what is paper 1? Well, it's a component of the Edexcel iGCSE History specification, and it is known as the depth studies paper. The paper 2 is the historical and it's something else. Yes, I don't remember it exactly. And then usually students must answer 2 questions from paper 1, but due to the COVID-19 crisis and all of the protests that happened in UK, Ofqual has changed some parts of the history iGCSE, and there is an option for students to answer just 1 question from paper 1, but only for the May-June 2021 exams. We don't know anything about any other exams that will happen later on, so that is just a temporary change, and I won't go in detail about that because your teacher will probably inform you about all of those things. And then one of the most important things to remember is that only 1 extract is provided for each question in paper 1. So an example extract would be something like this. This is from a sample assessment material PDF that was provided by Pearson themselves, and the link to that PDF is below. And this is about the history of Germany, the development of dictatorship. So they will give you this 1 extract and expect you to study it and analyze it and answer a number of questions based on this extract. So part A deals with answering and analyzing this extract. So the first thing to remember is that part A is for 6 marks in total, and that's why you should not be spending too much time on it. You should spend roughly 8 minutes on it, and that's because of course you need to give out more time for the other questions, the other parts of the questions, because they are longer and they require more of your attention and time, and they have more marks, of course. So you should just spend roughly 8 minutes on this question. This question is a what's the impression question, so you will be asked what's the impression of the extract that's provided. So the extract that I showed you previously, the first part A, is going to ask you what's the impression that the author has given about that extract, and here's just an example related to the previous extract. What impression does the author give about Nazi policies regarding employment? You must use extract C to explain your answer. As you can see, they have bolded must, which shows how important it is to use extract C to explain your answer, and if you don't use it, you're not going to get any marks because that's the main question. The question is about the extract, so if you don't use it at all, it's not going to get you any points. So this is just a brief summary of part A. Now I'm going to show you how to answer this particular question over here using a method which is very important and can help you quite a lot, and that is to use ITS. Now, if you don't know what ITS is, don't worry, it stands for impression, treatment, and selection. So first I'll go with impression. The impression is basically, as you might have inferred from the word itself, is what the author is portraying about the topic he's talking about. So what he's trying to convey, what his feelings are on the topic that he's talking about. So you have to establish the impression that's given by the author of the extract in the first line of the paragraph. Now, I forgot to mention this, but this is also very important. Your answer for part A should just be 1 paragraph. It should not exceed 1 paragraph because this is not a long answer, and you should summarize your information and your answer in just 1 paragraph. You shouldn't write too much because then you'll be short on time for your other parts. So you just summarize in the first line of the paragraph the impression that the author has given of the extract. So the author of the extract, what impression he gives. So over here is just an example line. The author gives the impression that the Nazi policies are not as successful as the Nazis claim. So this summarizes the basic impression that the author gives in regards to the topic that he's talking about. So you must clearly identify the impression that he's given. If you don't, then it makes your answer quite ambiguous, because the main question is what the impression is. So you must be quite sure to include information about what the impression is, and the best way to do it is to just write it in the first line, the opening of the paragraph, and that will give you good marks. The next thing is to discuss the treatment of the topic in the extract. So over here we were talking about Nazi employment policies in the extract, which I showed you previously for a brief moment, and thus you should discuss how the author treats that topic, i.e. how he conveys it, how he represents his information. So previously we said that the author gives the impression that the Nazi policies weren't, effective, and something along those lines. So you can provide additional information. You must provide additional information about how he discusses that topic in his extract. So, for example, you can see this in the language he uses, such as dubious, etc., And then moving on, you have to show what side of the situation the author has selected to portray. This comes under the selection part of ITS. So this is fairly easy to understand. So, for example, in this extract, he just shows the negative side of Nazi employment policies. If you want, you can rewind and read the extract again so you know what I mean. And so you have to determine what side of the situation he's trying to show, and once you do that, you should include it in your answer for sure, usually towards the end. So for example, the author has chosen to only show the negative side. You can keep this as your concluding statement, or you can add additional information as well, just a few lines, and I'll show you this in the next thing that I'm going to show you, which is an exemplar answer by a student. And over here, this is just the entire answer for that question which I showed you, and it includes the entire ITS method. So the author gives the impression that the Nazi policies are not as successful as the Nazis are saying. So over here he has used the impression part of ITS, which is very clearly visible. He has clearly answered the question in the first line immediately without delaying any further, and just answering the question immediately, which is a great way to start your paragraph. Then he talks about the treatment. You can see this in the language he uses, such as dubious or pushed into labor schemes. He also then chooses to list the ways in which the Nazis were able to report unemployment as lower than it actually was, dismissing women, saying part-timers were fully employed, etc. So all of this was the treatment section. He basically outlined how the author has chosen to display the topic to his audience. Then he writes that, so he has chosen to show just the negative side. The Nazis were actually very successful at boosting employment through rearmament and public work schemes, but there is no mention of that. So this is his concluding statement. So in the second last sentence, you can see that he has used the selection part of ITS, and that is what I was talking about. You have to write what side he is portraying. So he's portraying just the negative side, and then you can add a concluding statement or two. So over here he has displayed his own information, he or she, by the way, it could be any, and they've explained how the Nazis did actually do some positive things, and their employment policies were not entirely that ineffective. So this shows the examiner that you have some information of your own. You are, you know something about this topic. So this is a good way of ending your answer as well. And this was all for part A of paper 1. Now I'll just show you some important points to remember from this entire video in case you might not remember them. So this is just a small concluding slide. And number 1, you should spend only 8 minutes on part A of paper 1. This is very important. You should not forget your timings, and you must always have a watch with you, of course. You never know if there's going to be a clock in the exam room. And yeah, And even when you're testing yourself at home, you should always keep your watch or clock with you, whatever, and see that you spend only 8 minutes on this part. Then you should reference the extract using quotations. You should never forget to use quotations. If you forget to use quotations and you just reference the extract, it won't cut you marks, but it's very good if you do use quotations like that. If you are referencing the extract exactly like word to word, which you should not do that much, by the way, because it will show that you don't really understand and you're just quoting text from the extract. But if you do, you should quote the extract in like few cases, and when you do so, just use quotations. Next, you should not forget to use ITS. I explained all of that already. And when you read the extract, you should analyze and explain it. You shouldn't just try to summarize it or something. You should be careful that you're not just mentioning what it says, but you're actually explaining it and, answering the question. So that was it. Thank you for watching this video. I'm going to make more on other parts of paper 1. And if you're new, please don't forget to subscribe.